One is a structural change. I think we'll get on to that in a moment and probably we'll discuss in detail from, the different elements to it. But other is, he even touched upon a problem of awareness, right, on from students, various opportunities available and how it can be positioned and how they can take advantage of it. David, we'll quickly take your views and also, what are your viewpoints on this?
Yeah. So let me share my thoughts in the perspective of how the future of work is emerging. Before that, I just wanted to connect with the basic stuff we do in a day-to-day work life. So Ram, when you said good evening, I didn't hear anything from the audience, and then I thought I'll wake up the audience. So when we interview a candidate, most frequently asked question, most of us ask one question, especially to assess the ambition. What do we ask? Yeah, that's it's like a, what's your name type? What else? What's your mission? Okay. Yeah, where do you? Yeah, that's a question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Or when we meet someone or in our own kids and relatives, what do you want to become? That is changing. The question is, what problem do you want to solve in future? It's not what do you want to become. So that's changing. The second one, career ladder is no more. Career lattice. It is moving sideways, up, and looking at something outside. That is, it could be a second career or it could be something else you do, innovative way. So therefore, my thought broadly in 3 dimensions. One, the way the corporates still to be a king. That's a scale. Like Uber. If you see wherever in the world you go, it's there. But they don't claim that they run the transportation business. You know what do they claim? It's a technology business. The second, socially conscious, environmentally conscious. So it connects, basically the employees gives pressure to the corporate. The companies who are very consciously driving environment, people would like to associate with that. Example, Tesla. The Tesla, the car company, they don't claim that they manufacture cool cars. They claim they promote green energy ecosystem. The third one is challenging, especially from the social context in India, that is being independent, networked work environment, that is portfolio work. That is, me as an individual, I am the brand. I don't care what do I do for, I don't care about the company I work for. I care about the work I do. WhatsApp was an example. Few of us join together, we do that work, and then we move away. So therefore, the way I see, so there lot more contractual work will be happening, lot more consulting work will be happening. It's already happening in Western countries, but this is also going to happen in India. However, that is still is a social taboo. So tomorrow, if I leave my job and I say that I am going to be a consultant, the first question my mother-in-law will look at, oh, what's happening to this guy? Was he fired? Right? So from a human resource perspective, this is going to be a mantra in few years, that where we have a mechanism by which attract, manage, not own resources in the corporate. So that's going to be the aspect of human resource. So I'll come back again.
Sure. Thanks, David. And thanks for the big revelation that irrespective of the industry, all HR managers ask the same question in the interview, right? And it just took me back to me being in the interview panel. I asked exactly the same question. So It hasn't changed. But what do you want to become? Or what is the problem that you want to solve? It's a very new way of looking at things. And so one of the aspects you mentioned, in fact, there is a HR term for it. They call it the Hollywood style of recruiting, or Hollywood style of doing projects in technology. It is like, if you look at, if you look at the last few lines, the credits of Fast and Furious, it will run for about 15 minutes. And you can see there are about close to 1,200 different technicians with various skills across the globe, right from China to Vietnam to US, different kinds of technicians, multi-skilled people, highly trained, technical. They are all recruited for that one particular project. Okay, they don't worry about the question of long-term loyalty, commitment, all that which we organizations talk about. They are as committed. Their commitment, like David mentioned, comes from me, right? What do I have to get from this project? And they manage completely diverse teams for that particular project. After that, it's completely dismantled. Do you think their productivity is and creativity and whatever it is, anything lower than what it is in the organizations? Probably no. So that concept for actually hiring for big projects, I mean, it's already in existence, but a very formal concept for many companies are actually being implemented. So one of the trend expected is probably in 3 to 4 years from now, the Hollywood type of executing, Hollywood style of hiring will become the norm, right? But before we get into taking some questions, one quick 2 minutes from each of you. So now we spoke about the skill gap. The skill gap exists. There is also a huge opportunity in terms of demographics, but we are worried about the quality and the structural change. There is a problem of awareness, right? And with all this, a quick 2 minutes from each one of you on what in your companies you are doing, we are all doing to solve that problem of skill gap, specifically at the entry level, right? 1 or 2 initiatives that you think has really helped each of your industries bridge that skill gap. So we will start from Prem.
Okay, just to give a background of Blue Dart Aviation, we are part of the Blue Dart Express group. We're a subsidiary of Blue Dart Express, which is a courier group, okay? Now, in the Blue Dart Express group, we have a high churn. I mean, the turnover is about 14-15%, which is very big in those, because we have large numbers. And basically, we take them as courier boys and, build them up in the system. When we found that this was happening and that even in the market we couldn't get anyone, the Blue Dart Express team looked at a CSR project which identified people from the slums in Mumbai, for instance. They started with Mumbai. We have it here in Chennai also. 12th plus or 10th plus, 10th standard pass, 12th plus, put them through a 6-month program. Now, it was not for captive consumption. This was a group of students who had come out after 6 months who would be used in any kind of industry, whether it was the malls or whether it was, so they were skilled in various areas, like for instance, answering telephone calls, customer service, stuff like that. What we in turn did was our turnover is very, very low. It's about 4%. So we said, look, we will employ your guys after a couple of years, so we will take them on into our system if we need them, and you continue this. So what has happened is we've addressed a certain category of people and addressed that skill gap. But there are various other categories we haven't really addressed, But this is one solution that we found to the problem. So we take the guys from the Blue Dart Express group into our system, and that is how we are managing.
Actually, this is one silent, almost a revolution which is happening in many industries, which very less is being written about. A lot of us bring our CSR element in terms of developing skills, identify talent, impart skill training and absorb them. So that is one real, best practice which is noteworthy. From PayPal perspective, what is it that you're doing to bridge that skill gap?
Sure. Before I talk about that, I just wanted to kind of call out another data point, lest we sounded very, lest we made it seem like a sob story on the skill gap. It truly is not. Like I said earlier, if you look at a report published by CII over the years, the employability has increased substantially by 5 percentage points. I mean, I hear various data points on the table, but this report talks about 38% is the employability index, which is not very promising, but we know there is progress, right? I mean, it's kind of improving. And the silver lining there also, Ramkumar, is that the employability index with the female population is much higher than the male population. It's at 40%. This is a topic very close to my heart, and I think it will do us all a lot of good by increasing the diversity ratios in the next 5 years. So
Thank you. It doesn't look like in the room, but
I mean, this needs an applause, right? So there is a lot of silver lining and elements of that we're seeing, right? I think we spoke about elements of technology and how the trend is changing, how we are becoming a global kind of workplace of sorts and virtual kind of teams and so on and so forth. I think the fundamental thing for us from PayPal is that, and thanks for mentioning Tesla. Tesla is one of the people who started Tesla, was part of the PayPal mafia who started PayPal. So it's about innovation, it's about technology, it's about starting up a lot of these innovative ideas. Our fraternity is known for that. So for us, it is really about hiring people. I think knowledge is given. If you look at students, we've been hiring at least about 100 students every year for the last 4-5 years from top engineering campuses. I think they come with great knowledge, right? They know everything. They know their stuff, they know their code, they know their technology. That's not an issue. What we are solving for is really the skills and the attitude that they bring to the table. Skills, again, is something, I mean, we have a heavy duty RCG, recent college grad engagement program where we put them on a 3-month skilling, reskilling. We put them on a 3-year engagement plan so that we kind of, helping them at every life cycle. At least for the first 3 years, there is that element of hand-holding, so we do all of that. But I think most importantly, what we see is there is still a sense of service delivery, right? Whereas we expect in our organizations people to own and drive and kind of move stuff, take charge and kind of get things done. But I think it's probably cultural a bit in terms of how we've evolved as a country, but there's still that service-oriented mindset that we are trying to break, right? And we do it through a lot of programs. Internally, of course, we have the usual suspects, our LNOD plans, the job rotation formal programs. We do APAC-wide job rotations and global-wide job rotations where they're exposed to at least 6 monthly stints in each of the geographies. We have that, and I'm sure that resonates with a lot of you. But what has really worked fundamentally for us is the external-facing programs that we're doing, where we're exposing them to customers, where we're exposing them to small and medium-term businesses. Like we do the Start Tank is our own incubation center where we incubate a lot of entrepreneurs. PayPal every year identifies about 3 to 5 entrepreneurs that we incubate in our facility. We provide them with the infrastructure, space, and the mentoring needed. And our employees participate very closely in some of these projects by partnering with them, learning about the business, and also coaching them and mentoring them, right? That's a huge win. We've also started something called Business Challenge, PayPal Business Challenge, where we identify NGOs or small and medium-term businesses that have real business challenges. And we identify a team of people. It could be a technologist, an engineer, a product manager, a PMO, whatever, right? We assemble a team of interested people who want to partner with the business on their regular work hours. So they spend about 6 months with the business and solving real-time business challenges for them. And there's some great stuff, that has really been turned around, not just the exposure that they get, but the businesses have really benefited a lot, right? And we also run these hackathons and start fest kind of pitches where even within the organization you're an entrepreneur, right? How do you pitch for an idea that kind of takes a product to the next level? And remember, our people here are not developing products for the domestic community, right? They are developing the product that is touched by, our millions of consumers all around the world. So these are some of the top of mind initiatives.
Thank you. So hire for knowledge, skill we will impart, and again, a CSR aspect to bring in more better knowledge, better exposure, and definitely look at a different mindset. So mindset, skill, and knowledge and skill is something that can definitely be learned, particularly from top engineering college grads that you hire. David, your quick views on.
So, see, the skill also can be looked at in the context of what kind of work is done in the value chain, right? So for example, we are, CSS Corp is in support business. I also have a strong view that corporates also are the culprit to this, because the way we deploy, project our resources, the talent in a cheap way, right? But that was the needed one and so on. So in our context, we have L1, L2, L3 engineer. L3, just to give a context, L3 are the one who does, engineering work, is a lot more cerebral work. L1 are the very basic stuff. So the way we used to do is that, okay, so if we do this L1 work, L2 work, so number of tickets will flow in, so we will produce so many people, so therefore we pray for getting more tickets and then we earn more, right? So, and you don't have to really do a great stuff because it's a mundane one. But over a period of time, now it's changing. It's not because we wanted to change, but the customers are also giving pressure. So therefore, there are two aspects I quickly wanted to cover. One, from a business analytics perspective. We don't want to be seen anymore just solving your problem kind of things. So for example, in our last 15 years of experience in solving our customers' problem, we have 1 billion transactions done. So therefore, our analytics team go with the insight to CIOs and CMOs to say that these are the insights, these are the psychology aspect of the customers we are observing, and this can be your point of reference for you to improve your product. So, right? So, which means that your number of tickets will be reduced, but you will go with the different commercial models. And then connecting with the skills, we are inculcating idea of, guys, you are no more just solving the tickets, you can become an analytics here, right? You can become a business analyst, a solution engineer. So therefore, first of all, we wanted to change their mindset in terms of you can be a trusted advice to the customer. No more just a networking engineer who just solves some tickets and so on. So then, if we have to do that, we have to do that the whole lot of things. It's evolving. I can't claim that we have done it all, because customers also, they have to change their pricing model and so on. But from a future readiness perspective, now we are hiring specialists in networking, and then right from beginning, we are inculcating the culture of you are a partners to the customer. And then our curriculum is also designed that way.
Thank you. Rakesh, earlier you touched upon this point, right? See, sometimes you have a person who is well qualified for that position that you've seen. But probably, see, as corporates, David also briefly mentioned that point, that what is the change that we are looking at in terms of, bridging the skill gap in terms of looking at things differently, one from a business point of view, or from our own perspective on what is available and what we can do. So what are the things that, see, one is from your current industry and from your vast experience, can you name one or two initiatives that has been very, very successful or in bridging the skill gap from, your point of view?
Yeah. Am I audible? I'm just using this one. See, there are two things. One is the conventional approach, which is actually time tested, and it has worked well. So I'll come to that later. But the second part where the question arises is, how do we actually define the skill? How do we define the gap? And how do we bridge it? Because we've been talking about skill gap. What I found in many of these industries, whether it's automotive or whether it's consulting or whether it is BFSI, I found that very often we trip on actually being able to define what is the skill gap for X, what is the skill gap for Y, what is the skill for Z, right? And therefore we end up giving the same strokes to all folks, right? So that is the problem that I have been confronted with as to how do I design effectively any kind of training, whether it is at an entry level, whether it is a mid level, whether it is a senior level, that actually focuses on the requirement of that specific individual rather than grouping them together and addressing a training program where not everybody would be requiring all of it. Now that's the second part, that what we are trying now is, as he mentioned about the value chain, we are actually piloting with 2 or 3 key functions where actually we are microscopically studying the value chain and pulling out components of the processes, the delivery processes that require to be addressed, and then on the job figuring out through the quality managers as to who are the guys, which are the desks, which are the jobs where these quality gaps are arising, and therefore pulling out those people and giving them those focused training. Now this becomes, specific training for specific person, one-to-one training rather than having many-to-many training. So this is basically a kind of competency analysis that we are doing. Very micro level competency analysis we are doing, and we are building up the competency dictionary for various delivery processes. So hopefully once we have it, we should be able to analyze through the outcome of the work of the person as to which is the component of the delivery process that he's floundering in, and then we have quality managers in different sections who take care of this training. So that is one part. The conventional part that we are doing is, which we've been fairly successful and we need to do that, is that of course we work through interns, give them very good projects, many of them come back and work with us, and therefore they are ready to take off on day one. We have people who come in through the campuses at the grassroots level, and we have focused training program that's mostly hands-on, okay? And then we also have our seniors actually guiding, mentoring, and even conducting in-house program, because there's a plethora of experience at the senior level which they possibly can use to mentor these youngsters. So this is the two sets of training that skill development that we do. One is the conventional, the other is a little of a non-conventional. A lot of companies are actually engaging in competency development, but then it's a pretty tricky job. Not very easy to do, because for the last 1 year we've been trying to do that. But if you can do it, and I say that, okay, here is a guy X, and I have designed this template of skill development for you. This is a skill that you need on the job. This is what you have, and that's another area. How do you assess the skill gap of an individual? How do you assess my leadership skill gap? How do you assess my functional skill gap? That's a pretty scientific job. And that is where, pardon me for saying this, many of us as HR people, they fail, because it's a pretty difficult job to do. But in one of the companies, we actually built up a full-fledged assessment process, not for only managerial or leadership assessment process, even the other skill assessment process, and we did pretty well. So to sum it up, what we need to do is we make sure that when we define the skill gap, we are fairly on firm grounds and we are doing it right. Otherwise, at the end of the day, you find a lot of people who come out of the training program and say, well, we spent 5 days, and then you have those feedback, and then you're surprised as why the feedback didn't work well, and then eventually whether they actually went back on the work and found themselves more productive and useful and motivated. So I think it's quite a tricky area to work on, but then nevertheless it's very challenging. I hope I answered your question.
Very much. Thanks. So typically, there's so much of a trend, right? Not only in the skill gap problem, but every other problem that we face, that we are forced to, right, look at a lot of analytics, rather than one-size-fits-for-all solutions, look at specific customized solution. I think both David and Rakesh brought this point. Look at a lot of analytics, look at the problem very differently, have a very customized solution, and then just try to deal with it, rather than sitting on a pedestal and say, here is a skill gap, and crib about a lot of issues and say, see, the quality of graduates are no longer very bad, not good, and what do we do about it? And also bring in a lot of newer initiatives like bring CSR. All these two actually bridge the skill gap rather than sit on a pedestal. So before we wind up with this thread, wanted your view, Vijay, on, see, how do you see different industries evolving? I mean, what are the best initiatives that you have seen, right, which has been really path-breaking or very successful in bridging across the industry, right, what you have seen?
Okay. So I'll focus myself on just entry-level talent and the gaps there, because I think the minute we go into leadership and more senior people inside organization, each organization has its own nuances, which, so I think there's been a lot of interesting experiments done at the entry level, right? You can club it as, you can kind of classify them as organizations have partnered with specific institutions to integrate and influence the university curriculum. I think there are several examples of that, right? TCS itself has several examples that they do. Organizations hire people for a job, take them on as apprentices, include higher education as a part of the model, and show them a path. Wipro has some very successful models there. I think on the CSR side, there are, again, several initiatives. I think Prem spoke about one. Many companies and organizations have attempted to address this through CSR. I think with no malice to anybody, I think it's a little self-serving in that sense. They've tried to solve their internal problems in some form and shape. But CSR is another route to take, right? What Rakesh was speaking about as structural changes, I don't see any examples that I can think of that have attempted structural change. I think NSDC is a great example of a structural change that's coming, right? And it's parking itself right between industry and the workforce or the potential workforce, and it's trying to in some way incubate or drive skill as a thing. So today, for example, the skill ministry, this NSDC have taken a lot of effort to create what is known as the NSQF, or the National Skill Quality Framework, which starts equating skills with university level education, right? So if you have done a certain level of skill certification, it's the equivalent of a 12th standard pass. If you've done a higher, so the idea is to start giving people certificates that become the equivalent of a university degree at some point in time. And there are several global examples of that. I think Germany's done it very well. Australia's done it very well. Where the challenge really is in providing respectability to vocational skills, right? And so long as we continue to see an electrician or a plumber or a carpenter as less respectable than a software developer, right? Then there's a fundamental societal problem. Quite frankly, plumbers, carpenters, and electricians earn a lot more money than software developers do. At least at the base level, I would say those are far more desirable skills, right? There's an organization called NTTF, which I'd like to speak about, and it's based out of Bangalore. It's called Nedungadi Training and Technical Training Foundation. They focus on, they took over some ITIs many years ago, and they started doing electrician training and carpenter training and those kinds of things, right? And they recently held an alumni meet in Australia, right? Can you tell me, can you guess how many people turned up for their alumni meet in Australia, in Sydney? 25,000 people. Okay. So these guys have found a niche in the market. They found people, and the reason is they have this. They probably have that many alumni in Australia, maybe not so many in India, because those are markets where tradesmen are respected, right? And this is a country where we don't do that so well, and it requires a shift in our own minds. It requires a shift in the way we look at things. So those are a few examples. Ram, back to you.